Hello, insiders. How are you all doing? As you probably know, I am Crazy Ken, and hey, I'm back with a part two update regarding this rare prototype iMac. If you haven't seen part one, I recommend you check that out first. Spoiler alert coming up. So the computer would not post. It would turn on, the fans would kick in, and it wouldn't do anything else. Several of you suggested that the RAM might need to be reseated properly in the slots. Literally, that's all it was. Behind this little door here, I just took the RAM out, put the RAM back in, and like, no joke, it works. So I'm glad it was just a simple fix like that. So we're gonna boot it up, explore it a little bit, and then there's something else I may need to attempt. I'll show you in a bit, but don't want to spoil it just yet. So let's fire her up. That's a good sign. Man, these old displays are so reflective. You're just gonna see me like in the image the whole time. No, I can fix that later. But yeah, it's booting up here. That's pretty sweet. And again, just kind of reminding everyone of some of the prototype features we see here. We see some internal stickers. We see a white Apple logo instead of a black one. A lot of nice, rare differences that you don't see on the public version, the production version. Okay, it looks like the fans are still being a little weird, but yeah, there's quite a few features on here that you don't see on the production version of the iMac. Now, the screen is a little bit yellow from aging, so, you know, we just have to deal with that. No big deal, really. All right, let's type in the password. And there we are. We are logged into Mac OS X El Capitan. Before we continue too much, let's just take a look at this MOOC and see what's happening. So yes, we are running 10.11.6 El Capitan, and I did do a little bit of homework before recording this for y'all. I checked the serial number in lookup tools, and it does not show up, which is if I'm not mistaken, that's another indicator that this is a prototype. But I mean, come on, we already knew it was a prototype, but it's kind of cool to see the serial number not show up in anything else. There's not any rare, crazy, cool internal software on here or anything like I've seen, like on that testing iMac that was a reject from the production line or the assembly line. So we get this cool hardware, but we don't get any cool software. To the best of my knowledge so far, there's nothing else on here. However, that's where part 2.1 kicks in here. So here, let me just pull this bad boy up here. So we have a MacBook Pro right here, and we have some conversion technology to hook up the Thunderbolt connection of this MacBook Pro to the FireWire port on the back of this iMac. And I'm going to put the iMac into target disk mode. And what I'm going to attempt to do, there's no guarantee this will work, but what I'm going to attempt to do is some data recovery to see if I can recover any erased files that may have some cool Apple internal software or documents contained within the data. But first, we got to boot this thing into target disk mode. So we're going to restart. And what this does is it basically mounts this as an external hard drive to another computer via FireWire. So we're going to restart here. Hello. Hold down T. Hello? Make a noise, please? Oh yeah, by the way, there's that sleep light again. That awesome ring-shaped sleep light, which was not in the production version. That's really cool to see. There we go. Okay, hopefully it goes into target disk mode. If it does, we should see a giant FireWire icon in a few seconds. Yay! Target disk mode works. Okay, let's go to the laptop. And here we are. So, here is the Thunderbolt FireWire connection running into the prototype iMac. And as you can see, it just auto-magically mounts the iMac's internal hard disk as an external drive. That's basically how it behaves. So, what we're going to try is we are going to do a recovery. That's what we want. And we're going to run a deep scan. This will look at the disk much, much more closely. And as you can see, it's going to be scanning all these blocks here. So we have just short of 1 billion blocks that it's going to scan. And we're almost at 500,000. So this will take a while, and we'll see if we discover anything. Stay tuned. Also, my conversion technology dongle here is a little banged up. As you can see, it's bent there. So I am praying that it does not give out during this scan. Well, here we are about 3.5 hours in. 875 million blocks out of 976 million. Okay, looks like we're almost done with phase. Oh, we're already on phase 2. So now it's reconstructing. And boom, the recovery process, or at least the scan process, is done. So now You know, there's some built-in search and preview features in this, but without actually recovering the data, it would be pretty tedious to go through all the file trees and everything. It's not, you know, the greatest unless you actually restore everything to a hard drive. The thing is, though, I think I'm on a free trial here, so I may have to purchase a license to do the recovery, but let's give it a shot. I have this handy-dandy Seagate USB hard drive with 2 terabytes free that we can recover to, and the recovery size is 323 gigabytes. So let's check everything and hit recover. Let's see what it does. Yes, let's go to the prototype recovery hard drive and open. The application is not activated. Please activate the application. Okay, let me do that super quick. Okay, the data recovery is now going, and once this is complete, it should be a lot easier to search through things. I don't know fully what to expect, but it found 300 gigabytes of data, so there's gotta be something fun in there. This will be an overnight thing, so I'm gonna hit the hay. Well, I'm a night owl, so not right now. I'm gonna hit the hay in a few hours, and then we'll check back in on this. Okay, so we have a bit of a weird development going on. The recovery process got to a certain point and then it looks like it just hung. So I tried redoing it a few times, hence why there's these -1 and -2 folders. And it picks up, at least it looks like it picks up automatically where it left off, because when it resumed, the overall file size was smaller. However, every time I resume it, it just gets stuck at 3.2, so something is hanging it up. Let's take a look at the disk activity here. Read per second, 8 megabytes. Written, not much. So there's not a lot of disk activity happening, but something is being read. So I don't know. It just looks like it keeps getting hung, but maybe it's just moving very slowly? Yeah, this computer's pretty freaking hot too. I know the fans are running on here, but yeah, you're a toasty boy. Well, there is a log, and I have absolutely no idea what any of this means. Well, let's try turning it off and turning it back on again. All right, target disk mode is active. So after rebooting the system, I can't quite tell what happened, but the status of everything reset. Like all the checkboxes are back on. Just for grins and giggles, here's what I did. The first recovery attempt, which could probably still be usable, it's just not complete, I will keep that in a take 1 folder. This new attempt, which I'm going to run and just let it run overnight, will just sit in the root directory of the Seagate. So let's select everything there and recover. Yep, and we'll put it in the root. And basically we're just running it from the beginning again and see if it goes through this time. Let's take a look at that log. Get numb children. I mean, I don't know. Is that like children with nerve damage? I'm not really sure what that means. All right, well, fingers crossed, and hopefully it works this time, and the Krazy Ken curse can piss off. And that time it worked. Excellent. Data Rescue has recovered 983,619 files. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do next, instead of just like, you know, fumbling around trying to find cool stuff to show, I'm going to go through, not every single file, but a good chunk of files, and organize my thoughts before I present my findings so I don't look like a complete bumbling idiot. Okay, so slight change of plans before I do the analysis of the recovered files. I figured while I'm doing that, I might as well have this other installation process running. So to make this system a little more time period accurate, I'm going to install macOS 10.4 Tiger on here, because that's the system that was out during this prototype testing timeline. And another benefit to doing this is, there's the fans, if we recover any special testing applications from the data recovery, we will likely need an older operating system to run those. So that's why we got to get Tiger on here, and I think that'll be more fun than having, you know, El Capitan anyway. All right, let's bust out the English language. Makes it a little bit easier to read. Oh no! Well, why not? Right, so small change of plans. I'm going to attempt everything I mentioned earlier, but with macOS 10.5 Leopard instead of Tiger. Okay, well, so far so good. That's a good sign. This is getting further than the Tiger installer did. We're moving pretty quick, about 8 minutes remaining. You know, I love those old intro videos, but I don't know how much I can show due to copyrighted music, so I'm ending this part right now. We don't really need this on the internet right now. Now, if you're ever setting up an old Mac and you get this registration screen, I mean, it's kind of pointless nowadays. Quick tip, if you want to skip it, Command-Q, press the spacebar. It lets you skip all that crap. And boom! Press the done button, blue screen, and to the desktop. All right. So, now that I have this up and running, yeah, I took a little detour. I will get back to sifting through the recovered data and putting together my findings and reporting that. And then, if possible, I will put some of the apps on here and see if we can get those internal Apple testing tools to run. Well, unfortunately, none of the applications will work. You know, it's no big deal. If you want to see some more of those Apple internal tools in action, you can check out some of my other episodes on Crazy Ken's Tech Misadventures. But yeah, I'm looking at Phoenix. I'm looking for Peepin' It Real. Like, I'm searching all these things that I know Apple uses and the names that they use. And I'm also just searching for all app files that are on the recovery. And they're busted. You know, I'm looking at the file size of these apps, and they're 24 kilobytes. There's no way those would be functional. So that data was not recoverable, unfortunately, but it was worth a shot. All right, I'm going to keep digging through the recovery data and see what else I can find, and I'd love to show you. Okay, so I played around with the files a lot, and as you probably saw earlier, there's like over 900,000 of them. So full disclaimer, I didn't look at every single one, and any personal information I'm not going to show for hopefully obvious reasons. So here is what I discovered in the data recovery from that prototype iMac. So Data Rescue makes different folders per each file system it recovers, and it tries to like show everything it found structured as originally as possible, like how it would be in the original like file system. But there's some cases where the data has to be reconstructed, and then it puts that in its own little reconstructed folder. When it comes to metadata, specifically date metadata, that's usually intact for found files, but not always for reconstructed files. So it's kind of hard to pinpoint when certain files were made or modified if they were reconstructed because the data information is wiped out. But there's some other clues that give us some indicators as to when certain files were made. So to begin with, I've noticed a lot of the data which was after the prototype stage, after 2007, falls between 2009 and 2013, and it looks like there were at least 2 users of this computer. Now, since it's a prototype, it was going to be used for internal testing at Apple, but those iMacs went to production and then released sometime, I think it was like September 2007, so that testing period was earlier in 2007, but from 2009 to 2013, like, what was a prototype computer, you know, being used for, you know? So my theory is, since it looks like there were other users using this computer years after the prototype timeline ended, I'm just guessing that one of the engineers on the Apple team behind this iMac just like gave it away to a family member or something, like, I don't know. But it appears this prototype computer was actually used outside of Apple after the project was done, and maybe the users knew somebody that worked at Apple, family member or something like that. Not entirely sure, it's just a theory. But I did notice this, there were a lot of iPhone programming videos on here. And instinctively I was like, oh, was this like for Apple training? But then I realized, you know, these were actually from 2009, which again is after the prototype testing window, which would have ended sometime in 2007. So I don't know why these were on there, but I'm guessing someone who was using the computer about 2 years after the prototype testing timeline just wanted to learn iPhone programming. These are like all Stanford like tutorials and lectures about iPhone programming. Not all the videos play. This is for more than just the lecture videos, but you know, if the data is corrupted, the video might play for like 10 seconds and then stop, and sometimes the thumbnail won't even show up, which you see in one of the screenshot examples here. But you know, depending on how the bytes were overwritten on the disk,
you know, the recovery software won't be able to recover and repiece together everything. So, you know, stuff will be lost. But some videos do play, which is kind of interesting. Another thing I found on here was a bunch of retro Apple product photos. And this extra reinforced my theory of like, okay, maybe, you know, this computer was like given to a family member of an Apple employee or something like that. Because it looks like there's some employee gifts here, or like some more like non-public, you know, Apple memorabilia, because like that button that says ask about my affair. Some of these things feel like employee like trinkets. And I'm guessing one of the users of this computer at one time was selling a bunch of this stuff on eBay, because I did find receipts and shipping labels, and a lot of them pointed to eBay. But now let's transition away from what happened after the prototype testing window, and let's actually get into the juicy stuff. Approximately like 2006, 2007, when this iMac prototype was in testing. Did I find anything on the hard drive through the data recovery indicative that this prototype was actually used internally at Apple? Yes, and I think it was pretty obvious that this computer was already used internally at Apple based on the stickers and everything that were on there. But it's cool to see that get reinforced with software. There are multiple mentions of Phoenix throughout the recovered files, including a Phoenix CE application in the /indie directory. And Phoenix is a testing application Apple uses. You can see more of this on one of my Tech Misadventures episodes I did a couple years ago. There was Phoenix, there was a Phoenix user guide, a Phoenix communications protocol guide. They're both labeled as Apple Confidential, so that's some pretty cool internal stuff there. There was also the iTest app and multiple other testing applications. It's kind of cool to see the remnants of, you know, the internal test apps that were used at Apple, you know, behind closed doors, stuff that the public doesn't see normally. I also found this. I don't know exactly what this was, but it was some sort of log that did have mentions of Phoenix in it. So my theory is that an Apple employee was writing this for something. And I like it when logs have a bit of personality in them. It looks like this guy was getting a little frustrated with like these XML outputs for tables, or tables as he spelled it, and he said it took 4 effing days, and now I'm back to where I was before. So it's kind of cool just to see those like personal touches in the recovered data. Yeah, I think that's pretty fun. I also found the meme icons. I'm pretty sure we saw all of these icons in that Tech Misadventures episode I did a couple years ago. For certain Apple testing applications, they like their memes, Mario, Simpsons, cats. They use those as icons for their internal testing applications. Okay, so this was pretty cool. As I was going through the data recovery, I saw a lot of references to M72 and M78. Now, knowing Apple's history, that sounded like a code name naming convention, because they usually do like short alphanumerics like that. And I was thinking, okay, that iMac is probably M78, because it's the 24-inch, and the smaller 20-inch prototype, which I don't have, that was probably called M72. And so I was speculating, oh, you know, I'm seeing these alphanumerics, that's probably the code name, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a dumbass. I can look at the back of the iMac and look at the orange label. It's written on there, like literally, it says M78. So yes, the 24-inch iMac prototype here is codenamed M78, and I'm guessing the 72 is the smaller screen counterpart. Also in the upper left, you'll see it says RDAR : problem / and then a number. RDAR, that is short for radar. To the best of my memory, correct me if I'm wrong, that's Apple's internal bug reporting system, and they even have a mascot, a purple anteater. I feel dumb. I do not remember their name right now, but yeah, they even have like little pins that I think employees get them. Even when I was at Apple Infinite Loop just walking around the outside, I saw one of the office windows with a plushy anteater in there. And the other interesting thing is, in this version 1.8 screenshot here, it does say March 29, 2007, and at the bottom it says March 6, 2007. That falls within the testing prototype window for this iMac. And even the April 4th date on top, that all falls within the prototype testing window. So it's kind of cool to see all the dates just kind of like fit. So then I found another interesting thing here, this device / property override for test writers. look, I don't even know what the hell that means, but it was some internal looking document, and I thought that was cool. And again, the date lines up, July 20th, 2006. That might even be like almost too early for this prototype, but the file was still on this prototype's hard drive at one time. I mean, it had to be. Like, it was there. I saw it. What was interesting in this scenario passage in the documentation, it mentions this following scenario is for Mac Mini, which may or may not have an iPod dock. And that got me excited because I have seen a prototype of an iPod dock built into a Mac Mini. So it's just kind of cool to see that physically and then see like the thought process internally at Apple where they were writing this stuff down in a document. Now, no Mac Mini that was released ever had an iPod dock built in, but at one time, you can see it in the photo, they were tinkering with the idea of doing that. So some prototypes do have that. So then I also found history of bundle changes. I don't know exactly what a bundle is in this context, but it's still cool to see it say M72, M78, because that's referring to the iMac code names. And then there's like a whole bunch of information of like, okay, this version of the revision with the date, which falls within the timeline again, it's February 15, 2007. I don't know what an FW skeleton key.kext is. I know a kext is a kernel extension, but I mean, a chud, I should probably know what that is. I don't know. And then I thought this was the coolest thing at the end here. It looks like some sort of like test report folder, like a test was run on the system and the results were saved into this folder. And like we really know for sure this test was run on this computer because it has the serial number of the computer in it. So, you know, I looked up that serial number earlier of this prototype iMac. And, you know, it didn't show up in the lookup tools because it was never, you know, a publicly released system. And it's cool to see that exact serial number inside of the recovered data for these test files. So I can't open the test files. Like I tried. They're either just like blank windows of text. They're like 0 bytes. They got corrupted. Or it's all just bytecode. I have nothing to decode it. But we do have the names of the folders, Indie Log, Phoenix Configuration, Phoenix Logs. We even have the color labels. Those made it through the data recovery, which is pretty sweet. And again, the most important thing is the folder name with the serial number. It says pass. It falls within the timeline, April 17th, 2007. And I'm guessing that's at, you know, 9:52 and 11 seconds in the morning. It's kind of like doing some like, you know, digital treasure hunting. Yeah, I like Apple prototypes. Very fascinating. So those were the things I discovered, and that about wraps it up here. Yeah, this part 2 was much longer than part 1. There were some extensive discoveries here. Yeah, this has been one of the more fun pieces in my collection. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to leave a comment. I will do my best to answer. And if you have any suggestions or tidbits about any of the Apple internal stuff I looked at, or suggestions for other things I should look for in the data recovery, let me know. I'm open to suggestions. Your suggestions are what helped me get this computer working in the first place. So you guys are great. You all are amazing. So yeah, just drop me a line. And you have yourself a good day. Take care of yourself. Have a good one. Catch the crazy and pass it on.